الحمد لله رب العالمين الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين شفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين وأصحابه المنتجبين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى قيام يوم الدين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمسابنا بأبي عبد الله Hussain عليه الصلاة والسلام. The Quran reminds us in the form of a very succinct verse, مَا عِنْدَكُمْ يَنْفُدْ وَمَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ بَاقٍ. Whatever you have shall perish. Whatever is with Allah will endure. Now, as opposed to thinking that whatever we have of possessions will perish, in the sense of our belongings, our palaces and houses, our power, our bodies, our physique, our agility, I think it's to be seen at a much deeper level, that whatever you have of your own self within you, whatever you understand as yourself, your own knowledge, your own discretion, your own inner abilities, all of this is perishing. Why? Because you are here in a world which in itself is not real for itself. It is a mere reflection of the beauty of God. And whatever is therein doesn't belong to itself. In other words, you do not belong to your own self. And whatever arbitrarily you feel is you, that makes you yourself, is perishing, is going away. Whatever is with God, that will endure and that is permanent. In there is an awakener for us, that this self maybe needs to be directed to the self of God in order to find the real self and the real identity. Again, the Quran says, for the day of Qiyamah, لِمَنِ الْمُلْكَ الْيَوْمِ, whose is the kingdom on this day? And the response comes from God Himself, لِلَّهِ وَاحِدْ الْقَهَارِ, for Allah, the One, the overpowering, the vanquisher, as if nothing remains. All determinations, everything that is considered as other than God has perished, has gone. In other words, there is no reality between aside from the reality of God. It is only His reality. Whatever we assume of ourselves is a mistake. With that in mind, if we were to look at the life of this world, we will say, well, then the life of this world could only mean one thing: to find the real thing, to find the real self, to find the real belonging. And then there we understand that the whole process of life is for us to take the opportunity to search out that real thing and to reconnect with it. It is here then we look at Imam Sajjad Salamullah alayhi, because these are his blessed days. And the days of Arbaeen of Imam Hussain Salamullah alayhi, as we obviously attribute these days to Imam Hussain and the Arbaeen of Imam Hussain. We find that throughout his journey of Karbala and post-Karbala events, we find a soul through tribulations not reacting adversely. He doesn't become hardened of heart. He doesn't become miserable. There are no misgivings inside his soul. He doesn't become bitter and miserable at all. There is a different process that takes place inside his soul. If somebody has been through such brutalities, tortures, suffering, you can forgive them for becoming hard-hearted. You can forgive them for becoming disillusioned with life and with God altogether. Well, why me? But in the case of Imam Sajjad, we find a very mindful soul who is looking at the events in a very different way. In his dua, Makarim al-Akhlaq, and I'll be quoting from his duas. He says, "Oh Allah, free me from the distractions of this world in order to keep me focused for the thing for which you have created me for." Now, distractions of this world are not only the pomp and glory and the possession of this world. The distraction of this world are also the painful events, the tribulations and the sufferings. How many times do we find in our own lives that when we are offended, we are unable to come through that offense? We are unable to forgive. We are unable to let go. And that then distracts us from the central task at hand. And that is, وَمَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ بَاقٍ. Whatever is with Allah will endure and shall remain. And for us to get there, because we are so attached to the false person, to the false identity and false personality. In his phenomenal dua, he says, "O Lord, keep me for that for which you have created me. And deny me the distraction of everything else that is happening." This is how he is making his way back to Allah. Now his attentiveness and the level of his attentiveness is such that when we look at his dua, when death was announced in his presence, whenever the na'i, the pronouncer of death, would call out that somebody has died, his dua would be, "O Allah, do not allow me to take 2 successive steps without an interval between the 2 in which I become mindful that I am to return to you and that death is at hand and you may not allow me to take the other step." What a phenomenal sentiment he is giving here. Allow me not to take 2 successive breaths without an interval between the 2 in which I am reminded that I have taken 1 breath and the next one may not be given to me. Bring the notion of death so proximate within my mind that I am not distracted from you in the least. Now this is for a man who has witnessed the brutal murder of his father. Grief on one side, the psychological trauma, the memories of it all. Put aside the bitterness of the heart and the misgivings and the hardened heart. Put aside all of that. He will not even let his grief overpower him from the central theme of his life, which is to find his God. When we look at this man, we find that he has used the life and the life's tribulation as an opportunity to grow towards God. And as if he understood that whatever you have is not real. Even the brutal murder of your father, O Sajjad, is not real in the realest sense. What is real is with what is with me. And what is real is the opportunity at hand, no matter how it's packaged. And his opportunity was packaged in the most unbearable circumstances and ways. On the one hand, the heartache of losing his brother, his uncle, his father. On the other hand, the indignity of seeing what he saw of the celebrations of the people of Sham at the captivity of his aunts and sisters, which he found far more unbearable than the killing of the entirety of his family. All of this to one side and him on the other. If we analyze his du'as, and Sir William Chittick has such wonderful observations in the beginning of Sahifa Kamila in his translation, read it. But we can categorize these du'as in a variety of ways. And maybe it's worth pointing out a little. You see, du'as are meant to be very God-centered. Ud'uni astajib lakum. Call unto me, I will respond to you. But it's not only that part of I will respond to you that we should focus on, because normally our understanding of I will respond to you is a very inaccurate interpretation, because we feel we will ask God and He will respond. The verse is not saying that. The verse is saying, Ud'uni astajib lakum, call me and I will say, yes, my servant, I am here. Not that I will give you everything, I've given you everything without you asking anyway. Think about it. How wonderful are the sentiments of Hussain ibn Ali, Salamullah alayhi, when he says, "Oh Allah, even before I was worthy of mention and I could recognize you and I could ask you, you catered for my needs. You formed me within the darkness of the womb of my mother when I was incapable of asking you. You gave me my sustenance before hunger arose within my belly. You ensured that the sun rises in the morning and the heavens shower benevolently even before I could think of the connections between the sun and the showers and the growing crop." So ud'uni astajib lakum does not mean ask me and I will give to you. Ud'uni means call me and you will find me with you, because that's the real thing. The real thing is not you ask me and I give to you because I'm going to give to you anyway. We have totally misunderstood this. And on that note, a bit of digression, you've heard this from me. How many of us ask Allah for a breath? Think about these breaths. Isn't it amazing? We will amass wealth, but if our breaths get constricted, then the wealth in its entirety cannot procure one more breath. Think about it. The water that we drink, it's so readily available. If we were dying of thirst, we would readily give away our millions for some water to quench our thirst and to secure our life. Do we ever ask Him for water or the sunlight or breaths that we breathe? Allah reminds us, look, these things, even without you asking me, I'll give it to you anyway. Call me and you will find me with you. That is the central theme of life. That is the central goal. Ma indallahi baq. Find God. But how do you find God? He's not in a place confined in the Kaaba. How strange are the Muslims who run to the Kaaba to meet God. He who does not find God within himself will not find Him upon the Arsh. Forget the Kaaba. How can we confine Him to a house? His presence is the most overwhelming presence. The only reason we don't find His presence is because we assume this false identity to be the real thing. Now, if you look at Imam Sajjad's du'as, we find something phenomenal. In his daily du'as, read them. The way they are God-centered. Alhamdulillah, hamdan kama yastahiquhu, hamdan kathira. Hamd be for Allah. They are so God-centered. Another dua, he begins, "O Lord, I thank you for awakening me in this morning, for had you wanted, my sleep would have become perpetual." The way he praises God in those daily du'as, it's an awakener to become aligned with that central task at hand. In one of his beautiful du'as, he says, "Oh Allah, I seek forgiveness from you for every promise that I have made, for every oath that I have taken and I have not fulfilled it. And I seek forgiveness from you for all the damage that I've caused to your creatures. Oh Lord, I seek forgiveness from you for every bad word that I have said against your creatures. Oh Lord, if I've taken wealth from them, not given it back to them, and I've forgotten, I seek forgiveness, oh Lord, on my behalf. Allow them to forgive me. Make them happy through your own grace to allow them to forego and let go. Because there are many people that I have damaged and I have forgotten, or there are many that I remember, but my embarrassment does not allow me to seek forgiveness from them." He's becoming very, very open with God, and he's talking with God in these du'as. In another dua Tawbah, think about these du'as. It's like a person who comes to his senses. He says, "Oh Allah, I've committed these sins in heedlessness. They were so alluring. I was led by my ego, by my desires. Now, when I have awoken, I find that the pleasure of the sins have gone, but the burdens remain upon my shoulders. Now I stand before you in humility, unable to raise my head in front of you. O Lord, forgive me. Forgive me in a way that I don't revert to my sins again." This is what makes him the Imam that he is. I do believe that every one of them were quite unique. It is very wrong to lump them all in one. Everybody had a unique personality. They were all different from each other. There's nothing to say that one had more than what the other one had in its own specific quality. There's no harm in saying that. There's no comparison left here. In one of his du'as, he says, "Oh Allah," and then I ask ourselves, what du'as are we reading of this Imam? "Oh Allah, bless Muhammad, the progeny of Muhammad, and the noble Sahaba of Muhammad." That's what Imam Zainul Abidin is saying in his dua. "Oh Allah, bless every prophet that has gone before Muhammad." The next khutbah I'm going to just talk about this slightly. But imagine this Imam and the way he understands things. We come to that real core of his essence in one of his du'as, Dua Makarim al-Akhlaq, where he understands this relationship fully between himself and his God. And he realizes that the only task at hand is the effacement of his false identity and to embrace God fully. Now here he does not let his misgivings of the world, or the brutal murder of his father, or the torture of his aunts that took place, to overpower his memory. But he, through all of those ordeals, is softened in his heart. And he finds his focus and his direction. And he says to Allah, "Oh Allah, do not allow me to think that I am something within myself. O Lord, before you cause the tongues of your creatures to praise and glorify me, O Lord, make sure you drop me in myself 10 times further, so that their praise of me does not allow me to think that I am worthy of anything." Phenomenal, isn't it? Phenomenal, isn't it? He says, "Oh Lord," how beautiful. And I think he was paining for his enemies at this point. He was paining. He says, "Oh Lord, change the envy of the one who envies me with love. Let him love me instead." Because he understands the pain of envy. What difference will it make to the Imam if somebody envies him and is jealous of him? "Oh Allah, if he's jealous, make him more jealous, he can go to hell." That's our attitude. He says, "Oh Allah, replace his envy with love for me, so that he finds peace inside there." Can you see that? "Oh Allah, the one who hates me, replace it with affection, because hatred is a curse inside. Oh Allah, those who think ill of me, let them think better of me. Those who speak against me, let them speak well of me." It doesn't make any difference to him what they say or what they think. But he is caring about them. The heart has melted away so much in God that he is now mindful of the others. Then he says, "Oh Allah, when somebody withholds assistance from me, when it comes to me, let me not withhold assistance from them. And let me not think that I am favoring them. O Lord, he who speaks ill of me, allow me to speak good of him. O Allah, he who cuts ties with me, allow me to mend ties with them." If you look at these du'as, they are transformative. And we begin to understand the whole meaning of life. مَا عِنْدَكُمْ يَنْفُدْ وَمَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ بَاقٍ. Whatever you have is momentary. It will quickly fade away. Whatever is with Allah shall remain. Do not think that Allah is talking about the gardens of paradise. This is not worthy of God to say that about himself. Allah is far greater than paradise. He is not talking about paradise. He is talking about the real thing. That whatever is with God is the real thing. Even the paradise compared to what is with God is going to perish very quickly. Find the verses of the Quran, you will find 2 or 3 places where Allah says they will stay in paradise except if Allah wishes otherwise. They will stay in paradise forever, except if Allah wishes otherwise. That just shows. But in some places the Quran says, وَرِضْوَانٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ akbar. The pleasure of God is much greater than this paradise. So here it is. We see this beautiful soul, this gentle soul, going through these unbearable difficulties and tribulations. As opposed to interacting with them adversely, he uses them to become more directed and mindful. He uses them to gentle his soul and to soften his heart and to give away his identity and to embrace God. I'm going to finish on this note. The meeting with God can only mean one thing. He is not to be found in this world in the Kaaba. He is not to be found in the hereafter sitting on the throne. He is not to be found in paradise. He is to be found deep within. The meeting with God is that we allow His godly light to shine through us, to become as forgiving as God, as charitable as God, as noble as God, as truthful as God, as beautiful as God. And in the correctest sense, that is the meeting with God. And that is what Zainul Abidin shows us, that let us nullify the ego and allow godliness to prevail. May we pray Surah Fatiha for all those who have gone before us, and of course for the safety of all those lovers of Imam Hussain who are going towards Karbala, for their safety and well-being, and for all people of the world who are unwell and in dire circumstances, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring forgiveness, peace and safety to one and all. Al-Fatiha. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وآله الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه المنتجبين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. We had an event here a week ago on trying to encourage the faith community to work towards global human peace. Now in that, the people who represented the variety of different denominations from one faith and people of different faiths, they were expected to read from their scriptures, captions talking on peace, harmonious coexistence, the beautiful human values. Now if you were to shut your ears and eyes, not see who is standing there, not see their attire, and shut your ears when the introduction is being given that this person is from this particular school of thought, and then just hear what they were saying, you would say, I can't distinguish between one and the other. They are saying the same thing. And the amazing thing is that the Hindu and the Jew, one is supposedly monotheistic, the other one is supposedly polytheistic, although I don't believe Hindus are polytheists at all, to be honest with you. But I'm just saying this is the way our perceptions are. A Christian and a Sikh, a Muslim and a person from the school of Taoism, you will not be able to distinguish. You will say their understanding of the supreme reality is the same. They say he is colorless author. He does not have any preferential biases. He is forgiving. He is loving. What does he want from humanity? Nothing but the creation of a peaceful, harmoniously coexisting human family. Then you hear them talk about human values. It's the same human values that everybody talks about. And then the shame bit was that they did not have anybody not belonging to any faith. Because I'm quite sure that if a person who does not belong to any faith would come and say the same things about human value, it seems that perennial truth, the spiritual truth within religions, is the same. We believe in the same God, not in terms of the name of God, not in terms of the arbitrary features of God, but in terms of the essence of what makes God God. And we believe in same human values. And I really do feel that in the modern world, that is the secret. We need to now come together through our shared spirituality and shared humanity and human values and the virtues that we derive from the spiritual connection with God. I do feel that all the religions of the earth need to subscribe beyond them to an umbrella religion that they all call out to, and that is the religion of one most beautiful God and one most virtuous humanity. And that is what can finally bring humanity together as one family. In the name of God, displaying His untarnished beauty, going beyond the distinction of color, discrimination of gender, superiority complex of religions. And that is where humanity belongs. Now, in light of that, if we were to introduce these beautiful prophets, the Imams, the noble Sahaba, the saints, in light of this, they will not belong to one denomination or one faith. They will become the heritage of humanity in its entirety. And we will take pride in all of God's lights and reflections. I hope that this is the trajectory for the future human, and slowly, gradually, with little steps, we begin to get there. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursaleen wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. Allahumma salli wa sallim ala Muhammadin al-Mustafa wa ala Aliyin al-Murtada wa ala Fatimat al-Zahra wa ala al-Hasan al-Mujtaba wal Hussain al-Shahid bi Karbala وعلى علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي وحجة الله بن الحسن القائم المهدي المنتظر. اللهم عجل فرج وسهل مخرج واجعلنا من أنصاره وأعوانه والمستشهدين بين يديه. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد.